So when you do this, every single time, if you do it correctly, there is going to be one quadrant, exactly one quadrant, where you are going to end up with two pieces of information, right? So you see in the first quadrant, you have one piece of information. Second quadrant, you have two. The fourth quadrant is the only place where you hit both of them. That means that your angle that this question is based on is in quadrant 3. All right? Quadrant 4. Angle is in quadrant 4. Now, what does that mean? That means when I find what I'm looking for later on, I'm going to make sure that they are either positive or negative depending on the quadrant. So for instance, now that my angle is in quadrant 4, if I find sine of theta, should that be positive or negative? In quadrant 4, negative. If I find tangent of theta, it should be negative. That's what it's used for. Okay, now.
So now both of the ones we're finding are going to be.
Yeah. So now that's step 1. Step 2 is find a trig identity that most closely relates the quantities you have and need to find.
So it's in quadrant 4 because there's two.
Yes.
There's two.
Yeah, there are two pieces of information, right, which appeared in quadrant 4. So now we have to go back in our list and we have to find an identity that relates what we have to what we need. And you can't have anything else in the mix, right? So I have cosine, I need sine. So let's go here. Look, here is an identity for the tangent that relates cosine to sine. But why shouldn't I use that? This relates sine to cosine, but there's also tangent in the mix, which I don't have, so that's not a good one to use. I need an identity that only has sine and cosine. And look, you can use the Pythagorean identities, this one, the first one here. Right, we have cosine, you need sine. So basically you want an identity that relates what you have with one of the things you're looking for. Right, you are looking for tangent, but if I were to use tangent equals sine over cosine, in here, which piece of information do I have? I have cosine, I don't have sine, and I don't have tangent. If I have two unknowns in one equation, I can't solve for it. Right, but if I have an equation, and if in an equation I have two unknowns, I can't possibly find either one. Right? If I have an equation, there has to be at the most one thing that I don't have. So look at this one. The one to use here is sine squared theta plus cosine squared theta equals 1. So if you look at this one, I have cosine, and the only unknown is sine, and that I can solve. Huh? Right, 1 is a constant. That's not an unknown. It's sine. Okay, so let's see here. I have sine. Right. So I have sine squared theta plus cosine squared theta. Now I have cosine as 1/3, but I do 1/3 squared. Yeah, is equal to 1. So sine squared theta plus 1/9 is equal to 1. Yeah, let's subtract 1/9. Subtract 1/9. So sine squared theta is 1 minus 1 over 9. So sine squared theta is what? 9 over 9 minus 1 over 9 is 8 over 9. Now I'm going to take a square root. So let's go up here. Sine of theta is equal to, when you take a square root of both sides, plus or minus root 8 over root 9, right? We can split up the root. So sine of theta is plus or minus. Root 8 is 2 root 2 over 3. Now, I can't have plus or minus. I have to choose one. This is why we came up with the quadrant. My answer is in quadrant 4. In quadrant 4, sine is negative. It's so exciting, though.
Yeah, I don't know how you got 2.
So I had root 8 over root 9.
4 times 2.
Right.
So exciting.
Yeah. That's a I mean, no, it's not one of the special angles. So, because my angle is in quadrant 4, I have to pick negative sign, right? In quadrant 4, sine of theta is negative. So I say sine of theta is negative 2 root 2 over 3. Because remember here, we decided that my angle was in quadrant 4. So now I'm looking for sine, but it's in quadrant 4. In quadrant 4, all students take calculus, sine is negative, so I have to take the negative symbol.
So why did we write in there cosine? Just why we?
Because we had to use what we were given. We were given that cosine is positive, and that's in the blue quadrant. Then we were given that tangent is negative, and that's in the red quadrant. Because I had 2 show up in quadrant 4, that means my angle is in quadrant 4. So everything else I find now, it has to be consistent with quadrant 4. Okay. Okay, now, can I now find yes. Identity. Yeah. Now I need to find tangent of theta. Tangent of theta is sine of theta over cosine of theta. No, because we had to find two things. Tangent of, okay, so sine of theta, I just found it. So I just found sine of theta. And then what's cosine of theta? We already had it from before, 1/3. And now this is, I know this is your favorite thing to do. What can you do to the 3's? Cross them out, denominator with denominator. Yeah, you can, but it just takes so much longer. Yeah. So now, what have we got left is negative 2 root 2 over 1. So tangent is negative 2 root 2. So here we were looking for, we were being asked for sine and tangent, and we found sine and tangent. It's a lot of steps. Now, this is the first time we're seeing this, so of course it's going to be stressful, but we have lots of time. And, you know, think back to chapter 4, how intimidating some of that stuff was. And then it kind of worked out. It took time and patience and lots of practice, but it worked out. And that's what we need. Patience and practice. The 2 P's. Okay. A lot. Yeah. Okay. And listen, the only difference between where you are and where I am The only difference is that I have done thousands of these. That's the only difference. When I started out, this stuff was confusing. Now it's awesome because I've done thousands of them. That was the only thing. There was no magic pill, right? Like, I did not become a genius overnight and figure things. No, it was just practice and practice and practice. That was it. Okay? All right. So let's do another one. Okay. This one I haven't split it up. So cotangent is 2. Cosine is negative. So first, I draw a unit circle.
And you want the one that's closest to the inequality sign, like that one to be negative or positive, right?
Right. Well, you kind of work with what you're given, right? So look at this one. So I have here that cotangent is positive 2. So cotangent is positive. Where is cotangent positive? Here and here. Well, all students take calculus, and cotangent goes with tangent. Students take calculus.
So wherever it lands,
Yeah.
wherever it is, it's
Uh-huh. And then here I have cosine is negative, right? Let's do that in red. Cosine is negative. Cosine is negative in quadrant 2 and in quadrant 3. Again, you're always going to have one quadrant where you have two things show up. And that's where the angle shows up. Yeah. Well, it's in quadrant 3 for sine and cosine, but not for tangent. Okay. So my angle is in quadrant 3.
Is this how you want us to do that?
So now, I have cotangent. I need sine or cosine. 99% chance this is going to go with one of the identities here. I have cotangent. Let's use the last one. Cotangent squared plus 1 equals cosecant of theta. Oh man, that's going to give me cosecant. Is that okay? Because I need sine and cosine. Yeah, that's cool because it's the reciprocal. Okay. Cotangent squared is 2 squared plus 1. Ooh, cosecant squared theta equals cosecant squared theta. 2 squared is 4 plus 1 is 5 equals cosecant squared theta. You take a square root. So cosecant of theta is plus or minus root 5. Not 2.5, it's 2.21, blah, blah, blah. Now, can't have plus or minus, I got to choose one. In quadrant 3, cosecant or sine is negative. So I pick the negative. Yeah.
Oh, because our things in the third one.
Right. And sine or cosecant is negative. So remember how when we did the circle, we said cotangent is positive in the first and the third? Do you understand why we said that? And then cosine is negative in the second and the third. And so now you just look, in which quadrant do you have more stuff written? Third. That's why it's in the third. No, now we're finding sine. So now I was given two choices for sine, plus or minus. So then how am I going to choose? Well, I know that my angle was supposed to be in quadrant 3. Now I know that I just live in quadrant 3 for this entire problem. In quadrant 3, sine is negative. So I choose the negative one. Okay? And then, oh, my battery's running out. So sine of theta is negative 1 over root 5. Okay? Then, What else do I need to find here? Oh, sine and cosine. Okay, so look, I have cotangent and I have sine. Can I find cosine? I totally can. So, cotangent of theta is cosine over sine. How much is cotangent? 2 is, yeah. Cosine over sine is negative 1 over root 5. Now, if you are dividing by something and you have to get rid of that denominator, you have to multiply both sides by the exact denominator. So you have to multiply by negative 1 over root 5, negative 1 over root 5. So cosine, because you have to multiply by the exact denominator to get rid of the denominator. If it was cosine divided by 3, what would you multiply by? Not if it was divided. I'll show you in a minute. So it's negative 1 over root 5 times 2 over 1. So cosine is negative 2 over root 5. Okay, so I think what we are sort of getting confused with is this. Okay, so suppose you had tangent of x is equal to sine of x over 3. What would I multiply both sides by? 3. Multiply by 3, right? Do I multiply by 1 over 3? No, I multiply by the exact denominator. Yeah. So now if I have tangent of x is equal to sine of x over 4/3, now what do I multiply by? 4/3, the entire denominator. Okay. So let me tell you about homework. We're going to do lots and lots of practice, trust me. Yeah.